Boom. Sweet. So a couple of things before we get started. As always, please continue working on your final business project. It is worth so many points. I think this class, if you do the homeworks every week and you take your time to really look up all the answers, you should do good on those. And the case studies require, detailed thought. But anything that's not like time sensitive, I think is easy to get done well. So I think everybody can do relatively well in this class. And then the assessments you just have to do, honestly, and calculate them correctly. The case study is what'll trip you up, but not the case study. The final project's what'll trip you up because it's 150 points and then 50 points from your peers. Most people do well in the peer evaluations. I will say it ends up kind of being an all or nothing. Most people get 50 out of 50, and then there's like one person on the team that doesn't do anything, and they're like, we hate that person. Luckily, since people that don't complete the action plan tend to get dropped from those teams, usually everybody that's still on there does fine and everything's good. And yeah, I actually had one team one year that shocked me because they hated each other so much that I had to have like meetings with them about like, we have to calm it down. This is crazy. Because I was getting emails from every person in that group about how much they hated the other person. Like it was wild. And at the end of the year, they all gave each other excellent reviews. That made no sense to me. It was just like a collaborative. We're just all going to score somebody high. The thing is, no one would know if you scored them low, besides they got a bad grade, but they wouldn't know who did it. So, I don't know. So make sure you're working towards that. You're always welcome to send me a draft of anything. You can email it to me or send it to me on Discord. Anything you send me a draft of, my rule is you got to give me like 48 to 72 hours, but I will review it and I will send it back with notes on what to fix. And if I won't take points off or anything that I don't put in the notes. So if you send me something and I'm like, hey, this and this and this are a problem with it, and you fix all of those things, then I'm not going to take points off for something else that I find later. That's just on me. So it's kind of like a guaranteed way to get good points on the assignment if you send it to me early, is I'll give you corrections and then you correct it. Because honestly, that's how the real world works. That's how it should be. So there's that. This week, you just have the homework, and we have a case study. We'll talk about the case study at the end. It's not a bigger one, but I will say it's the one that people get confused on because it throws lots of numbers in there. It's about negotiations. But yeah, probably my favorite case study. Maybe. Let me share my screen. Everybody else doing good? Jet, you doing good? Surviving?
Yeah.
It always throws me off when you're not wearing glasses for some reason.
Apologize.
It's okay. No, you don't need to wear glasses. It's fine. People's faces look different. Different look. My daughter got glasses this last week, and she was like so excited about getting glasses and so jazzed about it and like really wanted them. And I got to be honest, that's a little kid thing, and it fades quickly. And I kept telling her, like, it's not that cool. I promise. you don't want them. In the long run, it is not the bee's knees. But now she's all about it. So whatever. They look cute on her, I guess. Am I sharing my screen? I think I am. So today we're going to talk about negotiations and conflict. Now, technically the chapter is called conflict, but it talks a lot about negotiations up front. So we start with negotiations, and you'll see why the two kind of tie together. Making sure my phone's on silent. Let's jump right into it. We'll start about negotiations first. Maybe take a little pause. We'll see, but I think I can get through negotiations and then right to conflict without stopping, and then we'll just pause before the case study. Good to see you. Glad you're here. So when we think of negotiations, we typically think of some large, complex, I'm buying a car or whatever, difficult situation. But in reality, negotiations are pretty much every interaction between two or more people ever. Like anytime you're discussing anything with somebody, a colleague or whatever, to a degree, you are in a negotiation. We can get a little extreme to say if truly every interaction is a negotiation, but we can definitely say anytime you're trying to figure something out with somebody else, it's a negotiation. Today we get to talk about different types of negotiation, and we get to talk about the ethics of negotiation, and if I was unethical when I negotiated with the guy that cut my trees or not. I don't think I was. I think it was just good business, but we'll see. You can tell me. You can tell me later. Unethical or not. Generally, we view that there are two types of negotiations. There are win-lose negotiations, which are called distributive, And there are win-win, which are integrative. Win-lose negotiations are best for any sort of non-repeated negotiation because generally relationships are good, especially here in America where we value our relationships within organizations. And if you are sharing a fixed resource where having more of the resource is good for you. That's pretty much the only situation in which distributive actually works. We are not going to have repeated interactions to a degree that matters. And there's a fixed resource in which I need more than you. That's it. There's something to be said, and this kind of gets into the ethics of it, is if there's a massive power disparity, if I have a massive power disparity of you, then maybe it doesn't matter that we have repeated relationships. If there needs to be more resources, then I get more resources, and yay, right? It just kind of depends. A la politics and power, and typically the big countries in the world operate very distributively, which is we have to have repeated trade relationships, but you need me, I don't need you, right? So I'm going to push it around. Integrative are what we should typically be engaging in when we're doing negotiations, especially within our work environment, which is what most of them are, and within your personal relationships with your spouse or kids or however it may be. This is the idea of we are both working together to get what every party needs. This could be kind of tied to when we're talking about like making decisions and stuff within our organization. We are really just trying to come to the best solution. Now, I may believe that what I suggest is the best way to do things, and you may believe what you want us to do is the best way to do things. But a true integrated solution is now we're both trying to prove to the other party why our version is best, and hopefully we get to what's called a collaborative solution, which is we now agree that my version's the best or your version's the best, so now we're going to do that because that's what we believe is going to be best for everybody. To make it simple, distributive, dividing up a fixed pie, integrative, expanding the pie. Distributive, we have a finite resource. Integrative, we are trying to get to the best solution. If you are ever buying a car, you are operating fully in a distributive area, kind of. So distributive is like, they obviously want the most money for the car, and you want to pay them the least money for the car. So we are at this point where we are trying to see who's going to get the most of the pie, and you're trying to win, right? Now, large dealerships actually have an incentive to operate more distributively. Smaller dealerships tend to operate more integratively. I'll tell you a very brief story because I like to throw this car dealership under the bus until they sue me. It's going to be recorded. But Jim Glover in Owasso, Oklahoma, right? My wife wanted to buy a car recently. This is like recently, it was last year. And we're the easiest people to buy cars from. I may have told you this before. We pick the car online, we show up, we drive it, I pay in cash and I leave. Like, I hate being there. And she picked the car out, we got there, we drove it, we said, this is awesome, but it's 8 o'clock at night, the dealership's about to close, and we have kids at home. So it's Wednesday, we're gonna come back on Friday, and we're gonna buy this car. And they said, okay, can we get you to sign something now that says you're committing to buying it? And we said, no. And they were like, well, I can't guarantee they'll be here Friday. And I said, it's God's will. And I don't think they liked that answer. So they're all this. Now, they're definitely operating very distributively because their idea is they want me to commit to buying it because I hadn't really talked about prices. I hadn't done anything. They threw a number at me and I said, cool, we'll talk about it Friday. And they're trying to get me to sign away and commit to it right then. Really not interested in our relationship at all, which would be integrative at the time. I said, no, and it's for my wife. So they have her information. I said, yay. And we left. They called my wife 9 times on Thursday. 9 times. And she answered the first like 2 or 3 times and then stopped. And this salesperson called her every hour or so to get her to commit to signing this, was emailing her papers to sign and all this stuff. And we said, no, we're not going to do it. And then on Saturday or on Friday came around, I was like, we're definitely not buying from them. We're going to go somewhere else. And then we went somewhere else. They called her continuously on Saturday till she was like, let me talk to the manager. And they hung up on her. And then the manager called her back later and like drastically apologized. And then we got this incredibly good deal because we went to another dealership and this dealership saw blood in the water and was like, they just got screwed over by these people. We're going to like win them as customers. And so they were super friendly, let us test drive it, didn't push anything, left my wife entirely alone. We bought the car that day for cash and I buy all my cars from them now. So there you go. And what's funny is we bought the exact same car for more money from them. So there it was. The other dealership was even cheaper. The dealership we went to is I'm blanking out on it now. It's in Bartlesville. But one focused very much on distributive. The other dealership was very integrative. They were caring about the relationship. I even paid more money from them. But in the long term, I liked it more because I liked how they treated us. They had a great selection, and I will repeatedly buy from them. And I feel comfortable when my daughter can buy a car in 4 years that's where I'll take her to buy it. The other company was focused on the short term, and maybe they would have got that sell for me, but reflecting on it, I don't think I would have gone back, right? And so that's it, relationship over. My gosh, now that it's winter, it's actually hot in here. So I'm going to throw some terms out at you, and you are going to need all these terms for the case study. So if you're paying attention to anything, and you want to do well in the case study, this is the one, because sometimes people get confused about this. They'll give me weird answers on the case study that don't match up. The first term is zone of possible agreement, or ZOPA. Oh, and I should say before I say everything else, these are things that you typically should have an idea about when entering the negotiation. So when we buy cars, I'm pretty clear on like what I want, how much I'm going to spend, what I'm willing to spend more for or not, and we're pretty definitive about it. Like, I'm not going to pay more than this no matter what. Like, we'll just walk away. So you set your zone of possible agreement. This is, if you're buying a car, what's your range? What's the bottom and top that you are willing to spend today on a vehicle? Some people like to say the value would be 0 at the bottom that you'd spend, but in reality, most people, the lower you get, they start worrying about like quality and stuff like that. Like, I would never buy my daughter a car under $15,000 or whatever. Maybe that's rude. Used cars definitely, but no new cars under 15. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's no way.
Then you're getting you're getting like manual roll windows at that point. You're not even
Stuff like that. And they definitely get things change when you get older. It's trying to get me to reboot the computer. That would be devastating. No. Things change when you get older. When I was younger, I wanted a cool car. Now that I'm older, all about safety. It's all I care about. My daughter, go to hell, whatever she wants in her car. Gotta be safe. I want a steel box. So there you go. But your zone of pulse agreement, what's your range on what you're willing to spend, or in any sort of negotiation, like how much am I willing to give and take? Then your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, your BATNA. This may be the biggest one. It determines who has the power in the negotiation. And this is, if we do not reach a solution, what are you going to do? And anytime you all enter a negotiation, this should be top of mind. If I had gotten into a car wreck, let's say I don't have a ton of money, but I really need a vehicle, I have to go to work on Monday, there's no way I can afford to pay Uber every single day, I have no working vehicle, and I go to a dealership, I am in trouble when it comes to BATNA, because my next best solution is to go to another dealership and hope that I get a better deal, pay for an Uber, whatever that may be, on Monday so I can get to work, stuff like that. However, like when me and my wife entered the car dealership, we had a working car. We had 2 other vehicles at our house. We have 3 working vehicles. We're just trading her car in for a new car. I can make this drag out for months. It doesn't matter to me. And if this doesn't work for us, I'll just leave and go somewhere else because I can, and I've got time. So our alternative is to wait and buy somewhere else later on. So your best alternative really determines who's going to have the power in this actual negotiation. Then you have the reservation price. This is the true price that you will walk away on, the exact price that no matter what, you have to be done. Often, this is a fixed price that cannot be changed. So it's like, that's how much money you have or how much you're going to be approved of if you're buying a vehicle. But it doesn't have to be an actual price. In negotiation within your department where we're trying to figure out, who's going to take lead on this project or whatever, there may be certain options that cannot be done. Like this person cannot take the lead. And then you have anchoring. And we'll talk about the psychology of anchoring. But anchoring is whoever throws out usually the first solution or the first price is trying to set the entire negotiation around that. Which brings us to the psychology of negotiations. This is fun. We could do an entire class. I could do a whole damn semester on the psychology of negotiations. It's pretty fun. I took a class one time where they had an entire section on negotiations, and we did it for like 3 or 4 weeks. The professor was from Yale. She was really cool, and it was pretty fun. And we got to do all sorts of stuff. Where we had more people in class, we would do this, where you pair up, and I give you both sheets of paper that are like, this is your side of the negotiation, what you know and what you want, and your side of the negotiation, what you know and you want, and then you just go at it. And it's kind of fun because after like 4 weeks of doing that like 8 times, by the end, you get pretty good at it. So first, we have anchor and bias. Now, anchors are interesting. In negotiation, we typically say that you should anchor first. So you should throw out the number or throw out the solution first and build it around it. Now, there's a psychology to anchoring. So one, anchoring bias is the first solution, the first number thrown out. Now you have a bias towards that. You view that as like the value, right? Excuse me. When you come into a car dealership and they say, what's your price range? They're not really trying to, they're kind of trying to anchor you. They really are trying to figure out like what they can actually sell you around your belief. But once you've settled on a car, then they're going to show you a price that you're going to have to work down from. But they're going to continuously basically state, well, look what you've saved, right? Like where we started, even if they started too high. So it's pretty good. If you ever choose a car, we typically say, this is what we're willing to pay. And that's why it's a good idea to be really, really informed beforehand so you can throw out something reasonable that maybe is a little bit below what they would ever reasonably get to, so they can slightly try to pull it back up. That's fine. But you have a bias towards it. Now, if you've ever watched something like Pawn Stars, it used to be more popular than it is now. Really popular for a while. I've got a cool shirt, gold and silver Pawn Star. My friend went there in Nevada. Kind of a trashy store if you actually go to it. You know what I'm talking about? If you actually go to the store, it's a little rough. But they have a main room and they have a staging room where they film the show.
A pawn shop being rough?
Dude, yeah, but it's
I
famous
couldn't
one.
believe you.
And they do like
In Vegas of all places?
hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. So I thought it would be nicer. But they have a strategy there that's pretty clear. They're obviously actually very good at negotiation. A lot of the reason the show is famous is because of their personalities, but I would never discredit the fact that Pawn Shop was very successful before it was famous. So they're good at what they do. And that is, they want to know what you want for it first. And they always ask that. Now, that's the opposite of what I just told you about setting an anchor. That's reverse. It's called diffusing an anchor. And the point is, I want you to throw something out first so that I can decimate it and diffuse it and make it, you look like an idiot, be like, you're so stupid for thinking that. Because then whatever I say next, the psychology of it is, this is now the credible answer. So you throw out your number. Now I'm going to tell you why you're dumb. And now here's my new number. What's up?
My dad taught me a negotiating strategy about anchoring, but he does let them throw the first thing out because sometimes they'll overball what you're doing. So they'll be like, oh, I want $25 or like $100. You're like, yeah, that's a lot better than 25.
Yeah, in a pawn shop, there's definitely that too. If they go too high, I can be like, or too low rather, I can be like, great. But they don't. They always go, and then they do it, right? The show actually got better as it went on. I noticed they got more friendly when it came to that. But setting the value around something. Now, the best way you can do this in negotiations is make sure, first, charisma definitely helps a lot. Be very, very informed. Try to pull your apparent bias out of it. You're trying to state any solutions that you have as friendly and factual and sometimes mutual if you can. So anchoring first is usually the best strategy, but there are times that it's better to actually diffuse and let someone anchor and then you take it away. Then we have loss aversion. This is that people fear losses more than they value equivalent gains. I have to get more water soon. I got that water because it was cold. This water sucks. It's warm.
Drink coffee, it's hot.
Yeah, I do that all morning. So loss aversion is people in negotiations will often reject something even if it seems fair if they feel shortchanged. And you see this on Pawn Stars all the time, so I'll stick with it. the offer they make may sometimes actually be fair. It's like, listen, I'm a pawn shop. This is what it goes for on the market. I have to make profit on this and I have to do all the work to sell it, right? But as soon as that person is like, well, I want $1,000 for it and you're offering $500 for it, telling me the market value is $600, I feel shortchanged. I'm not going to do it, right? And they'll say no. So in negotiations, know that fairness is not actually what people are always looking for. They're often looking for what they call loss aversion, especially if they have preconceived notions coming in. Like, I want to buy this car, I definitely want this car, and I want all these features, and it's going to cost me $20,000. But it turns out it's going to cost me $25,000, and that is the actual price. But I will fight tooth and nail and tell you to go to hell because I think this feels wrong. And then framing. Framing definitely matters. This is more of the psychology of it. How you frame statements, just like I said with the car dealer saying, well, let me start up here, and then every time they waive the docking fee, which I don't even know what the hell that is. I've never known what that is, but I've never bought a car that didn't waive it, so I don't even know why it's on there in the first place. But you're going to waive the stocking fee, we're going to waive all this other stuff, and then look how much money we saved you, or look how much it's off the sticker price, or whatever that is. So they're all working through what they call frame, which is saying something like, you will gain $2,000 in savings, is more motivating than you will avoid losing $2,000. So in your negotiations, always frame, try to frame positively, stuff like that. Now we can talk about power in negotiations. We've already talked about positional, informal expert, relational, and BATNA power. Well, I talked about BATNA a little bit before. In negotiations, your position over people as manager, CEO, whatever it may be, professor, the information and expert power you have over something, your relationship with the person, and then, as I already said, BATNA, what's their best alternative, gives you power, gives you more influence over this negotiation. And honestly, we usually say it's not bad to necessarily leverage that stuff as long as you're leveraging it generally ethically. Like if I'm in a negotiation with somebody, like if I'm working like a consulting role, because of my PhD and my background, if we're discussing something, I lean heavily into my expert power when I'm making my recommendations with the manager about why they should treat their employees this way. Part of the reason being like, hey, listen, you hired me, so so easy. But leaning into that power is okay and can be good, but this is typically where you derive it from. Relational power is like why, your wife always wins the argument, or, wins the negotiation despite anything else because your relationship. It's like, well, this is how it has to be. I really thought that was false till I got married. So true. So true. So many stereotypes about marriage are real. All positive, though. I love my wife so much. We celebrated our 4th anniversary on Saturday. It's great. She bought me thank you. She bought me a heated coffee mug. Fantastic. Press a little button on it. The whole thing gets hot. Keeps my coffee hot the entire time. I hate drinking cold coffee. I want my coffee hot.
But you drink decaf coffee. That's
I
not
do
really
drink decaf
coffee,
coffee.
really.
Well, I used to drink a lot of coffee, and then I got enlightened. So now I drink decaf coffee. Enlightened. It keeps me from being jittery. Let's talk about ethics here. Because we gotta. I only said enlightened because I knew you would take it poorly. Yeah. Negotiations sometimes get a bad term. I blame car dealers, to be honest. But often making any sort of deal between companies or with employees can sometimes feel slimy. And that's because we see a lot of them as win-loss when really they should be and can be win-wins. I can't ever actually tell you what is ethical and not ethical. I think that's wrong. But these are things that I think that it's unethical in itself. But these are things that generally we say are not good practices within negotiation. First is representation or misrepresentation by commission, which is direct lying. False claims about competitors' offers, stuff like that. Now, the reason I put that up there is because when I was writing this, I actually added this slide last night. I was like, oh, I should put this in there. And while I was writing it, the example that popped into my head was, we have 1 million trees on my property. It's annoying. But specifically, there's 14 really close to the house. And so I have to get the cut all the time where my insurance company's like, we will drop you if you do not. So I have to get them cut like every 2 years, and it's so expensive to get trees cut. And I had this guy come out and quote me like $5,000. And then this other dude came out like the same day, and he was such a good guy. He was so nice, and he is sitting there, and we're standing in my front yard, and he's like, "I'll do it for 4,500." And I said, "I really like you. Like, I really like your crew. You're really nice and all that stuff." The guy that came out here earlier today offered me 4,000, but I like you so much. If you would do 4,000, I'm not even gonna call him back. I'll just shake your hand right now. And he was like, "I can do 4,000," and I was like, "Great." And I got 4,000. And all my friends were like, "No, that's just good negotiation." And afterwards, I was like, I just straight up lied to that guy. So
He's just an honest Joe, never expected you.
never expected me to undercut him. I know. I will say I put his signs. Now I'm justifying my behavior. I put his sign in my yard. I told my neighbors, and I do know that my other neighbors got him to cut it because it did it so damn cheap. 4,000 for 14 trees, nothing.
Total?
4,000 to cut the trees and chip them. So they chipped them and hauled them off. They even asked if I wanted them. And I said no, because we have a big burn pile. And I said, no, they took them away. It was great. You'll never get it that cheap. I'll give you his card if anybody wants it. It's
I
great.
would have taken some of your firewood.
Oh, yeah, see, I should have done that. Some of my neighbors took my firewood. I don't have a working fireplace anymore.
Actually, I will take that card.
Really? Yeah, seriously, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
He's great. Shows the area. So that's direct lying, what Professor Smart did. Then you have misrepresentation by omission. This is withholding key facts. Most car dealers do not directly lie to you. And I'm not saying they're all unethical. That's not what I'm saying. They're typically not going to directly lie to you. A lot of that's for legal reasons. But they can withhold a lot of information. Like, is this the lowest you can go? And the answer is obviously no. Or, we usually don't charge the docking fee for this. Or you can get the warranty cheaper if you go through a third party or whatever that is. They will choose not to tell you that, right? And that's technically misrepresentation by omission. That's like in a negotiation within your organization, when you're working with employees and managers, you never want to engage in either of these because the ultimate goal should be to get the company to their goals, generally. But really the way employees operate is I need to do whatever's best for me, or as we'll see with the conflict lecture here in a second, to screw over the other person. And then emotional manipulation. This is, playing on people's anger or distress or negotiating in bad faith in general. We all kind of understand what that can be. And then pressure tactics, which is also a common one for salespeople. Every time you get on Amazon everything's always on sale, but only for a little bit. Yep. Always for all of time. Steam, video games get you for that. I remember Steam puts things on sales, right? One of the most annoying ones, it's a video game place, for those that don't know. And one time I wanted to buy a game, and I was really unsure about buying it, but it was on 30% sale, and it was ending, because it was like summer sale was ending, and the summer sale ended, and I was like, oh, damn, and I refreshed it and went back up to full price, and then like that night I got on, and it had been discounted again. I was like, cool. So those are pressure tactics. Now, this is probably the most common one that you're going to see everywhere. Typically the thing we exploit on people is FOMA, fear of missing out, and we exploit time. So you're under time pressure. It's the best price for this, blah, blah, blah. You go to places like Hobby Lobby where everything is always discounted. That's always so annoying to me. Put the price. Picture frames at Hobby Lobby are always 50% off. No, they're always $10. They're not $20. This is stupid. Sorry. Or FOMO, which, do this because everybody's doing it or whatever.
Buy a Beanie Baby. Everyone else is doing it.
Buy a Beanie Baby.
Yeah. You don't want to miss out.
You don't want to miss out. I forgot about Beanie Babies. God, those were like the Pokemon cards of my childhood. They were a big deal, like worth lots of money and stuff.
They are worth a ton of money. I mean, listen, that's my investment fund right there. Retirement. It's a new Beanie Baby that's out recently.
I don't even know Beanie Baby's still making stuff. So last slide on negotiation. Generally negotiation, to have good negotiations, because the object you should always be out to win in negotiations. I'm going to be honest. But you should hopefully be out to win-win in most situations, especially within your organizations. What we care about, and especially when dealing with employees, because those are repeated relationships. And even an employee that is on their way out, you have to know that how you negotiate with them will resonate with other employees in the future. So it's almost like relationship by proxy. basically your reputation. Ask lots of questions. Understand what is most important from each side. The car dealer that got my wife's sale did a really, really good job. Expert salesperson, one of those people that have been selling for like 35 years and was really good at it. They told me he was their top salesman. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he talked to my wife, and my wife's motivation was spite. It was, I hate that other guy, I'm going to buy a car here. And the motivation for me is, I want my wife to be safe. And his sales pitch to my wife was, I will leave you alone. You make the decision in your own time. And his sales pitch to me was, this is the exact car that I just bought my wife, who's carrying around my 3-year-old child. Here's a picture of her with it when we sold it. That was the sales pitch to me. And I was like, well, damn, if he puts his, he'll put his wife in that car. I want to put my, that's a good sales pitch. But he understood my side. Find shared goals. Use objective, specific criteria that we can all agree upon. That's why facts and information are great. Focus on the gains, which again plays into the psychology of the fear of loss and framing. And then be creative. I always appreciate creative solutions and creative negotiations a lot. I am so much more likely to buy stuff from people when they find interesting little creative ways to get me. Like buying a Christmas tree, going out, buying a tree. It's a little bit more than I want. And they're like, well, if you buy it, I'll go tie it to your car for you. And I'm like, hell yeah, done. Didn't really cost them a whole lot more. Creative solution to get to the same number. Fantastic. I love stuff like that. Now that brings us to conflict. Now, before we get to conflict, I have a theory here, and I'm recording it. And by the way, this isn't a hate on students. I love students. And I think one benefit I have as a professor was I came right out of college to you all. So I just did this. You know what I mean? Like I was just there. I am under no illusion that there's plenty of students, I'm sure, that watch my lectures after the fact and fast forward to the end just to get to the lecture question. Definitely, right?
I've done that once or twice.
Of course. I get it. One time I took an online class that was at 8 a.m. and I used to open up my laptop, turn it on, and go back to sleep. Didn't turn it off when I woke up. That was terrible. I'm a doctor, sue me. I figured it out, It was like theater or something. Anyway, I'm not doing the lecture question right now, but I will do a bonus question that you can put on your lecture question. So I'm going to give it right now. So when you do the lecture question at the end, make sure you also answer this question so you can also get bonus points. It'll probably be like 3-4 points, something like that, So as we get into conflict, I want you to tell me what industries in your mind, or what industry do you think has the least conflict in it? So like among the employees, what industry do you believe has the least conflict? That is your bonus lecture question.
And you said between employees or between?
Between employees.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer right now. We can do it at the end. You see my theory here? It'll be funny because when I go back and I look at the lecture question answers, there'll be like half the students that only answer the final question because who wouldn't answer both? I mean, that's no hate. I don't care if they don't, whatever, right? But bonus points. I was just curious. It's the only way I can really test it.
I have a weird answer for you.
Okay. So I wish I could make everybody watch my stuff on YouTube. That'd be cool because YouTube actually tracks like retention rates. Blackboard does not. I can't see it. I can see if people clicked it. I can't see if people watched the whole thing. Which again, you're all adults. Do what you want. I put the rules up front of you, and then you do it how you're going to do it. It's fine. So let's get into conflict. Now, immediately, when I say the word conflict, it's viewed negatively, and that should not be the case, honestly. Conflict's not always bad. So that may change some of y'all's answers here in a bit. It's estimated that managers spend about 20 to 40% of their time dealing with conflict. It drastically varies based on industry, which is why I asked that question. They spend a lot of time clarifying issues, exploring options, developing solutions, also dealing with interpersonal conflict, typically between employees. That is also such a hard thing to do. As a professor, the most difficult thing I have to deal with is conflicts between two students. When two students have a problem, the great thing is I usually get to lean into, you're adults, figure it out. Like, don't talk to each other, whatever. Only if it's serious conflict. And then if it's serious, then I can elevate it and deal with that. Very rarely. Students are usually pretty friendly. I've been blessed in that regard. Now, there are negative consequences of conflict before I talk about the positives. Wasted time, too much conflict will lead to lower motivation, increased grievances and turnover. If you have too much conflict, people leave your organization, and they can be destructive to just restructuring. Restructuring. Wow, that was a sentence. Whoa. This is a fun chart that I fully back. I like this chart a lot, or graph rather. As conflict increases, organizational outcomes, which are typically like money, performance, turnover, stuff like that, actually get better. And that is something people don't realize. And that is why I say conflict is not always bad. As your level of conflict increases, your organization has more positive outcomes. Less employees leave your organization, employees work harder, you get better ideas, everything increases. And then we hit a tipping point and it starts going back down. This chart has relatively stayed stable across all industries forever. It's also the same for your marriages, in case you're wondering. People that get divorced have lots and lots of conflict. They're screaming all the time, or they're not talking at all, right? A little bit of conflict is actually healthy. Now, conflict isn't because of the word conflict. We always view it as bad, negative, terrible. Conflict can just be like disagreements about something that now you have to negotiate through. It is a problem arises that now we have to solve together, whatever it may be. So a little bit of conflict to a moderate amount of conflict in an organization actually just shows that your employees are engaged, because non-engaged employees don't engage in conflict. People are talking, they're working together, they are problem solving, and they are aware of the problems, because no industry is without problems. Okay? However, if you get too much, then you start delving into destructive conflict and disruptive conflict. So now we're at the point where conflict is actually causing more problems. It's taking up too much time. It's hurting relationships, stuff like that.
So it's a conflict along the same lines of stress, where you need to have a
Yeah,
balancing.
a little bit of stress.
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit of stress is good. Employees that are not stressed at all aren't taking things seriously. That's the idea. Though there's kind of this idea of a flow state, and now we can get, wow, I could really go into a psychology rant here. It's this idea of like flow state, that in a flow state, are you experiencing zero stress, then you're operating optimally? You know what I mean?
Or you're at peak stress and you're flowing.
Or you're at peak stress. Yeah, because Tetris actually became famous for, I'm really ranting about psychology now. Tetris became famous for the flow state. That's why Tetris sold so well, and that was like what they pushed. And Tetris was the idea of, we put people in a perfect level of stress where it's difficult, but you're capable to do it. And so you're just operating, and then you're in the flow and you keep going. So yeah, yes, it's just like stress. Tetris is one of the coolest games ever made.
Can't believe someone beat it recently.
A few people beat it, haven't they?
There was a 14-year-old kid in Australia, like, played it till it broke.
The game I'm best at in life is Pac-Man. And you can beat Pac-Man, but it's been done by a lot of people.
Have you done it?
I have not. It takes like 8 hours.
Down to get good.
I don't have that kind of time. Or eyesight, honestly. I lose it after a while. So before we go any further, I do want to talk about emotional intelligence and conflict. I write EI. I prefer to write EI instead of EQ, but it's the same thing. So if you read it in your textbook or anywhere, it may say EQ. EI and EQ are the same thing.
That was Spanish.
EI. Emotional intelligence. I don't like EQ. They just do EQ like IQ. That's why they're doing it. So, EI and conflict. How might a low EI manager handle a disagreement about missed deadlines? What about a high EI manager? So, emotional intelligence, as I discussed with you all in the past, is the secret elixir to success. And we know that emotionally intelligent managers tend to not only handle negotiations better, but generally conflict better as a whole. They tend to be able to take conflict and prevent it from escalating and to solve it in healthy ways. High EI managers also tend to understand this chart right here, and they are okay with poking the bear and getting people involved when it's low, but also knowing when to calm the room down when it's too high. And that is all emotional intelligence. It's very difficult to do unless you have a really good read on people and yourself. They're also good at not losing their cool, which is a big way to prevent conflict from escalating. So typically EI gives you high self-awareness, recognizing when you're starting to get defensive and angry and starting to make conflict negative. High self-regulation, recognizing it and then preventing yourself from getting angry. Empathy. understanding other people's emotions and motivations. And people that are high in EI are often great with their social skills, great at framing. EI obviously is also good with negotiations. Now, I have kind of wondered for a while if my wife is actually high in EI or low in EI, because she gets unreasonably angry at stuff at work, but she has all these great outcomes at work. And I thought, something's wrong here. And then I realized what it is. She gets super mad, super defensive, and unprofessional as soon as she turns off the camera and she's ranting to me about it and she's telling me all the things she's going to do. It's like this employee, this, and this, and yelling and ranting about it and getting really, really upset. And I always think, you're being irrational. But you can't tell if she's being irrational because then she's like, I know. And then she starts getting mad. But then I realized when she's actually dealing with the employees, completely different, right? Like calms it down, pulls it together, wraps it up. So maybe that's really high EI, you know? I don't
I do
know.
the same.
It's what?
I do the same thing.
Yeah, it's like venting and ranting outside of it because she'll rant to me in a way that I'm like, I really feel like maybe you're in the wrong here. It's like, no, and then yelling and all this stuff. And then she just deals with people so well when it matters. So probably high EI. I don't know. I'm not much of a ranter, I don't think, so I don't get it. Well, I'm a ranter. I'm not an angry ranter. Except for my decaf coffee. It's good. Good. Live long.
I hope in like 10 years we find out decaf causes cancer.
Is that what you hope?
That's what you get for mutating God's special child.
I'm actually I buy very specific decaf coffee that's been water pressed, so the caffeine's like gently removed. I think other ones use like some sort of like acid to like strip it or something. But you pay more though for the water pressed stuff. But whatever. This is definitely not your book, and I was a little bit surprised. Glass seal. I don't know if I said it name correctly. Model of conflict escalation. You can look it up. It's everywhere. This is a pretty famous model. There's actually ways. I think I put on the next slide. Did I put a way to simplify it? I think I did. Okay, I did. Good for me. This has been used forever. It used to be a simpler model, and then it was developed further in the 50s, I think. I have notes on it here. I could read my own stuff. I think it was the 50s. Expanded this model. We've used this in business forever and in relationships. It's the idea that I can give you the tiniest version of this really quick. It is the idea that small, tiny arguments can evolve to very, very angry arguments where you entirely lose the original point, and now it's just destructive, right? It's just become nothing about the original concept. You're arguing with your wife over something stupid. It escalates to something completely absurd until you are fighting, like cats and dogs. So it says that conflicts escalate through 9 stages, but specifically 3 big sections. Now, originally when you engage in conflict with somebody, you are at the win-win state in that within an organization, conflict arises. And when we're solving this conflict in the first stage, it can be beneficial to both of us. And this is when all conflict should be solved. These first sets are completely fine. They are good. This is good conflict. Then you move into win-lose. Win-lose is at the point where conflict has gotten slightly past solving the problem and has got into the realm of, I need to prove you wrong. I have to beat you. The point of conflict originally is to solve the conflict, but now we have moved into, it's not enough for me to win, I need you to lose. Then we move into lose-lose, which is full scorched earth. So here we're focused on the conflict. Here we're focused on the conflict and hurting the other person. And here the original conflict has entirely been lost. And now my new conflict is to destroy this person. Full scorched earth.
Does have the coolest names, so maybe it's the best one.
Limited destruction. Yeah. These are all
Together
there.
into the abyss.
Total
Sounds like
annihilation. Together into the abyss. That's the original. This is the original theory.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Look it up. There's a lot of stuff on it. But this is the original theory. The original modern day, they would write it much different. But anything from the 30s to 60s is way cooler the way they do stuff. And this one's upheld forever. They kind of nailed it the first time or second time. This is the second iteration. So the first one is tension, debate, actions instead of words. Essentially, this is just we're building up tensions between us. We start to debate it. And then eventually we get to a point where I'm getting tired. This is kind of the end of win-win. I'm getting tired of discussing it. So I start moving into physical actions, like resolving the conflict myself, actually doing. Which leads into coalitions, loss of face, and threat strategies. This is when we get to the part where I'm starting to dislike you and it's becoming personal. And eventually the end of this is threat strategies, where I'm basically telling you we're going to do it my way to resolve the conflict at threat of you, right? And so I started talking to them. And then eventually we get to lose-lose. And this is the battle.
What point are hands thrown? I'm assuming like 8.
I think total annihilation would technically be it. Well, limited destruction, the way the original author describes limited destruction is I need to severely damage, this is their words exactly, severely damage the opponent with all the tricks at my disposal. So maybe then, but so it's using your own or your power. Your opponent is no longer regarded as a human. That's part of their statement for limited destruction.
So what is Into the Abyss if that's limited?
Yeah. Well, you want exactly how to decide it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So total annihilation, the opponent is to be annihilated by all means. So limited destruction is I'm going to use everything I have. I'm going to beat you. Right. Total annihilation is now we've got, I always thought that every time I've studied this, I've seen that as the tipping point of like total annihilation is truly defined as this person has to be defeated by all means. I've also read their original work, which was it becomes all encompassing. So like my life is revolved around you losing. I need to beat you. And then together into the abyss, this is how they describe it. From this point, personal annihilation is accepted in order to defeat the opponent. So this is the point where I'm okay with self-sacrifice as long as you go down with me.
So spite-filled rage.
Yeah. Like I can hurt myself so you lose. I simplify this because when we teach this in a management perspective, we usually don't use all 9. We go from win-win to win-lose to lose-lose, and I do it like 4 quick ones. But yeah, there you go. I can also say that most arguments, even when they get to the end, I can't remember what the term's called, but you're escalating the conflict, but you eventually, the conflict's resolved or you divert away, so you don't get to the point of like this extreme harm. Also, don't view these as like beating somebody up or something like that. Complete annihilation can be, that's it, I'm gonna undermine you to the manager, right? Even if it makes me look bad for being a tattletale. Stuff like that.
I assumed like number 9 would be like, don't come to work tomorrow type attitude.
Or I'll beat you up. Well, it can be different for everybody, right? So the way we look at this is the simplified 4 version is disagreement, problem. This is basic conflict. Then personalization, which is towards the end where we're shifting into threats and we're getting to win-lose, which shifts from an issue to personal. And then it becomes polarizing. It's not just about the person, it is truly us versus them. And then destruction, my goal is truly your harm and the solution's completely lost. So there you go. That's the escalation of conflict. Great, good stuff, whole bunch of stuff on it. Excuse me.
How dare you?
Okay, good. I'm doing great. We're gonna go till just past 6:30, I think, and then take a break. We'll be good. Oh, I gotta pull my other notes back up. I had notes just for that right here. There. So let's look at different types of conflict. At the top, we have the focus of conflict, which is the issues or the people. Now remember, as according to this, our little escalation of conflict, everything starts at the issue level, and then as we move into here, it becomes personal. And most conflict, we want to be at the issue level. However, when I'm speaking of personal level here, it can be that the conflict is personal issues between the two of us, right? Like we have a true disagreement in the organization that may be separate from the organization completely. So this can be personal differences, informational deficiencies, incompatible roles, or environmental stress. And we'll go through each of them. So people-focused is in your face, confrontations in which emotions are fueled. This is basically me getting angry at you before personal matters. This is almost always heated and emotional, whereas issue focused is much easier to be negotiation focused. And also, issue focused is much easier to be win-win. People focused can be win-win, but when people are emotional, they tend to lean into the win-lose, and so that's never good. But as I said, they are personal, informational, role incompatibility, and environmental induced stress. And then we'll show ways to actually deal with conflict. Personal differences are conflicts that stem from different personal values and needs. These are the easiest to solve when you have organizations that you do a good job of hiring people with similar values. At the beginning of the semester, I told you all, like, oh, you need a diverse work group. However, you should hire people with similar values. That is primarily to avoid personal differences. Do you want kind of a dark, politically charged example of me getting to watch a company spiral into company-wide conflict that I thought was going to destroy a multi-million-dollar company? So I got access to Slack notification or messages for this, but I can't tell you the company. But one day I would love to write a paper about it. This was at the peak of Roe v. Wade getting overturned, right? And so that happened, and this happened like the following week. The company decided we are going to take a neutral stance on this, right? Sorry, okay, our message pop up here. We are going to take a neutral stance on this to avoid causing conflict within the company, knowing that people in the company are going to have personal differences about this. So their neutral stance was, since some states allow abortions and other states don't, we are going to now offer paid medical leave and paid travel for you to travel to get any medical surgery done outside of our state. Not specific to abortions, any medical surgery, right? But they made a very public statement. The CEO wrote it. They sent it out to everybody in the company that we are going to be neutral on this. We know 10-4s are hot, so we have amended our policy to accommodate everybody. So now everybody can use it. So if you need to go get a kidney transplant out of the state, your company pays your travel and stay to do it, right? That's what they did. And they said that, and then all hell broke loose because people said, I don't want to work for a company that takes a neutral stance on this. This is a serious issue about this or this. And really the big blow up was the neutral stance. And other people were like, well, I don't want to be paying because you get your check garnered for your insurance and everything. And it's like, I don't want to be paying for a company that's supporting people to travel and do all this. And so I just read continuous messages. I mean, I couldn't believe people were typing this in their work. Like, I would never in my work, because you were just asking to get fired. Because they were like threats, like real threats. And your name is tied to it on Slack. Everyone can see this. And the people are sharing it on LinkedIn. They're sharing it on their Facebook post, what the CEO said. And really it was funny because in an attempt to be neutral, they ended up just pitting everybody against each other. And their personal differences, this conflict, I mean, it escalated in like 2 hours. I sat there and read all this stuff. Like, this is crazy.
This is the reason we have this saying, let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah, I kind of thought if the company didn't say anything at all, they probably would have been okay.
Like, what was McDonald's opinions on Roe v. Wade? None. They didn't need to have one.
Yeah.
They just didn't say a word.
Yeah, so their company decided we were going to take a neutral approach, and in that neutral approach, they basically sparked personal differences. And as I said, it's easy to deal with personal difference conflict when people have similar values. But in this instance, it was different beliefs and needs, and this was basically brought it to the forefront. And that conflict's so impossible to stomp out, besides what the managers tried to do, which is, this is a place of work, we're not going to talk about that, right? And then the counter argument to people is, well, I spend 40% of my life here, so we're going to talk about it. And that's what happened. So it's pretty cool to watch. One day I would love to write a case study, but I watch this spiral. It was pretty cool. I had a friend, far away, I can't tell you what the state is or anything. Far away friend, I'll say that. That was sent all this to me and then was like, I will give you access to look at the Slack. And I was like, do it. Just sit there and watch it all come in. I can't do anything with that data without permission, so it wouldn't matter anyway. But I don't have it anymore. I would have to get permission. I have to get IRB approval. And then I would have to find a way that I could get that information publicly, or I'd have to get permission from the company to do it. And good luck. Some companies are chill about that stuff. You'd be surprised.
I'll probably be able to find it.
You get a cool CEO. Yeah, it just takes one person posting on Reddit, then it's fine.
I mean, let me remind you, in Costco, their CEO threatened to kill one of their board members over the hot dog, like an actual threat of, I will kill you if you move this price. I don't care if I'm retired.
Oh, that's cool. See, I didn't know about that.
Is it?
Let's move to a less touchy one, which is informational deficiencies. Informational deficiencies is conflict that arises because of misinformation and misunderstanding. If you can prove the information is wrong or it's a simple misunderstanding, this one can be quickly resolved. However, I will say, in my experience, informational deficiencies are one of the most common conflicts. People misunderstanding each other or not operating under the same information. Role incompatibilities when conflict arises because of our roles, we need different things. A la the people that are selling stuff in your company and the people that have to do like the maintenance on that stuff. My wife's company I always laugh about because I always joke about the salespeople, but they sell software and it's custom software. And so the salespeople are like, we can do anything you need. And the IT people are like, we have to make it and fix it. So you're making this a problem. So they have conflict between the two of them for pure role incompatibility. The most common problem I see is salespeople promising something that an IT says we can't do that or we won't do that, and then the salespeople getting mad because they already promised it. Conflict. Right.
That's why it's good to be a jack of trades, to know what you can promise and what.
Yeah, I get that. I think what ends up happening is because the company can be very sell first, and IT can pretty much do anything. It's like what ends up happening is salespeople are told to do what they can to get the done, and then IT needs to figure it out. If I could estimate the way that company operates. Very successfully, though, I will say they do great. And then environmentally induced stress. Conflict results from stressful events in the organization's environment. This could be high work hours, actually be physically difficult to work there, a big project due, whatever that, and conflict arises because of the stress. Good? Good. It's a cool little chart that your book gives. It shows forcing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. We're going to talk about all five. I used to actually hide the next 5 slides, and then I was like, I'll just go through each one to help me organize my thoughts. These are the ways that you can generally resolve conflict, at least most conflict within your organization. The first is forcing. Forcing is when you are going to satisfy your own personal needs at the expense of the other. This is your true win-loss. This is the way we resolve this conflict is I leverage my power or whatever I can to get what I want. And now the conflict is resolved because I won, right? That's it. Forcing is generally not considered good. There's actually times in the world that forcing can be fine in negotiations and in conflict resolution. But the outcome is you may feel vindicated, but the other person may feel defeated. So generally we say forcing's bad, especially if you can avoid doing it. Which is funny enough. Then we have avoiding. Avoiding is basically choosing not to identify or deal with the conflict. People that don't like conflict, usually 2 things happen. Either the other person just gets what they want or no one actually solves it at all, and the problem gets worse. So you have an inability to handle the emotions of the conflict, and the outcome is things get worse, right? It's bad. This is why we teach people, I'm very introverted, and I'm generally actually pretty quiet, but I always had parents that are like, you gotta speak up for yourself, you gotta be loud, stuff like that. It's very blessed that I have a young daughter who's very outspoken. She takes it from her mom, so she'll never engage in avoiding conflict resolution. She will force it or figure something else out. Then we have accommodating. Forcing, I'm going to get what I want. Avoiding, no one's getting anything that they want because we're avoiding the conflict altogether. Accommodating, I'm going to satisfy the other person's concerns by neglecting my own. This may preserve our relationship, though people may think less of you in some situations, so maybe you're not actually preserving it, because there is something to be said about respect. But you are essentially giving the other person what they want. There are times to do this as employees dealing with managers, and sometimes even managers dealing with employees. There are times to be accommodating. And I can't tell you when they exactly are. Some stuff I can, but not this. But do know that typically You can set a dangerous precedent or lose a little bit of respect in some degrees. Then we get to the last two. These two are generally considered the best. And the very last one is definitely the best. And I love it in research when I get to say this is the definitive best, because rarely do I get to do that. Rarely. Usually I have to say, it depends. That's the common thing to say. But compromising. This is, I'm going to seek partial satisfaction for both parties. So we have a conflict. We need to solve this conflict. So we're going to compromise back and forth. You want to pay $20,000? Or you want me to pay $20,000? I want to pay $15,000. So we pay $17.50, right? And we meet in the middle. You don't get exactly what you want. I don't get exactly what I want. It's the old saying of the good negotiations are the one where both parties feel like they got screwed, right? Doesn't work out. The good thing is, both parties can say that this is a win. It generally shows gamemanship, and it often preserves the relationship because you're willing to work with each other. However, it often leads to a suboptimal resolution. Because remember, in organizations, a lot of conflict that arises, the solution can be for the betterment of the organization as a whole. Which leads us to collaborate. Collaborating is, we are going to try to address the concerns of both parties, and we are trying to get an outcome that we both agree is best. So you have a conflict, a problem between employees. Let's say our company with their medical leave policy. I do not know what the answer would have been, but maybe if the organization could have found some sort of stance that would have made both sides feel that they were heard, or if they could somehow communicate that, hey, us taking a neutral or a neutral stance is best for everybody and your job and your life outside of here, then that could have been seen as collaborating. Collaborating doesn't always mean coming up with a third solution, which is what some people think. It's like, here's a conflict. I think we should do this. You think we should do this. But there's a third solution we come up with together. Sometimes it means doing my solution or doing your solution. It's just you've convinced me that yours is the best. That's the way to do it. So collaborating is the best if you can do it. It should be your default strategy to convince people or to work together. I shouldn't say convince people. I almost said to convince people that what you're doing is right. Working together to find the best outcome together that both of you agree is the best outcome. However, it's most difficult to implement, and obviously there's times that you can't do it. Sometimes a conflict is what would be best for me is definitely not going to be what's best for you, so there's no way to completely collaborate on this. We're going to have to compromise. Cool? Good. Cool. Yeah, good. It is 6:37. We're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to pull up the case study. Actually, hold on. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up the case study. We can read the case study, and we'll take like 10, 15 minutes to do that, and then we'll discuss the case study, and then we'll get out of here. And we'll go watch Kansas City play Washington.
What about NSU play before we're playing?
Is NSU playing football tonight?
Well, they did the homecoming thing today. They turned the fountain green.
That is
and you
fun.
weren't there.
I was here.
Well, I couldn't find you in your room, so.
You what?
I actually have no idea. So.
My room in Tahlequah?
And is it not on this?
It's here. It's downstairs.
I was walking around like 11. I was like, where is this room?
Oh, right downstairs. Almost directly below us here. No, it's so in here we have, I think I have enough case study for you all. I hope I did. Let's see, conflict, assignments, case study 4. My MBA students, your case study looks a little bit different, but pretty similar. So pull the negotiations case study here. It is about a true story between a buyer and seller trying to buy, I believe it's a condo in California. And it's a little bit more complicated for some people, but it's really, it's just, I don't think they wrote it the best. But read through this. Then I'm going to talk a little bit through this part here. So if you're listening or you watch this part of the lecture, you're more likely to get all this right. So take your time, read through it. It is 6:38. We'll try to talk again about like 6:50. We'll discuss the case study. We'll be out of here a little after 7. Great. I'm going to pause the recorder in front of the restroom. I'll kick my recorder on. Hopefully you all read through this. I've read this case so many times now. I will say this, reading the case again, I should say, the case is designed so that one person can read this and the other person can read the other one, and you can do it like we did that one in my class where you get to go at it. But we can't do that here. The way the class is formatted, it's just impossible. When you read the side from Ken, I will say there's a whole bunch of information in here that really does not matter. It's not a lot. Not for at least the questions that we're going to talk about. So the skinny of this is a case that actually happened, and generally we have Joan, who is the ex-wife to a former or current MLB team owner. So her net worth is 2 point something billion, isn't it? It's really high. It doesn't matter. 2.7 billion. I was gonna say once you're over $1 billion, who's counting at that point? But 2.7 billion. Now that's her net worth. One thing I like to tell people when I do this case study: know that net worth is not cash flow. Obviously, net worth can include assets, and also every rich person I've ever dealt with is still interested in making the best deal. They are not.
That's how they're rich.
That's how they are rich. They are. Ever tell you about the dude dropping the money through the cracks? Right? That's what I think of every time. They are not in the business of losing money. So do not think. I've had some students say 2.7 billion. That's so much money. 1.9 million. You could offer. She'll pay much higher than that. Most likely, no. And most likely, she's got people working for her. And also something else, I don't know how this deal was done, and I'm not saying anything about Joan, but with a network of 2.7 billion, I doubt you're dealing with her directly anyway. You're probably dealing with somebody else that does it all for her, most likely. Which also shocked me, looking at how some rich people live, that they don't have to do their own grocery shopping and all that stuff. Just a whole different life, man. Whole different life. So she wants this house. Now, I want to point a few things out as we get down, because we're going to get down to it in the questions here. When I read this, these are things only known to her. But I ask you, what are some questions Ken could ask her in just a bit? He is trying to get at why she wants this particular lot and what's interesting to her. Just like the car dealer trying to sell a car to me and my wife was like, my wife wants to be left alone. I want to save car for my wife. So he asked the right questions to get that information from me, and then his strategy resolved around that. For her, money is not the obstacle, but she says she wants a fair market value. She'll probably be pretty upfront about that like, I know it sells for this or something like that, or she may lowball and who knows. Towever, there's also the idea of she's buying it for her son. She wants her son close. They're quiet people. They want to live, together without neighbors and stuff like that. That is stuff you would have to fish out of her to learn that is one of her motivations. Another one of her motivations is she understands that there's no other place really close to her. And that is something that Ken would also know if he did his research. So very important for Ken, he needs to understand, what is her driving motive? What does she care about? Money's not an obstacle, but she still wants a fair market value. But importantly, knowing her net worth, she's not going to have some hard fixed can't pay this or whatever, right? That's not going to be an issue. It is going to be an offer she sees as fair, and he needs to know that it needs to be pitched around the thing she really cares about, which is her son. I think it's her son living beside her. Now, for Ken, it gets much more complicated. Ken's definitely in the rougher situation here. I appreciate people like Ken taking big real estate swings. With kids, can't do that. I would never. This dude is cash poor, but he's definitely not asset poor. He obviously had a lot of money at some point. He's owning several lots in a very nice place in California. But the skinny of his story is he has overstretched himself. He has not sold these lots. Costs went up too high for him for construction. With the 2008 crash of the market, it was harder to unload these things. A lot of people were in the same position as Ken. I shouldn't say a lot, but similar positions as Ken with having these assets they poured money into that they can't unload very easily. Now, he wants to sell the unit for at least 1.4. Selling it for 1.9 would be good for him. However, technically, he doesn't have to do that. He's just got to sell it enough not to get foreclosed on so that he can survive. Now, what's funny about this case is Ken only needs to sell it for 1.4 to really turn a good profit. And she sees the market value, fair market value of being 1.9. So you and I and everybody else who reads both sides of the story says, if we are coming to a win-win, nice negotiation. This is a happy, healthy world. We're all doing what's best for everybody. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. I'll sell to you for 1.8 million. That's cheaper than what you want. I make more money. You've already got so much money, and it's all great. That is not how this would work at all. If she knows that he's going to get foreclosed on, if he doesn't get, I think it's like $350,000. Yeah, $350,000. Whoa. Like, I'm your only offer. You're about to be foreclosed on. If I give you $500,000, you basically have to say yes. That's crazy. Like, I'll just win this outright, right? I'm not saying anything about Joan. I don't know them as a person, but they are a real person. But in the real world, it would not work. Most likely, I mean, obviously, there's rarities. If she understood that he's about to get foreclosed on and needed this, that he isn't going to get anywhere close to the best deal. So now Joan probably, or Ken probably knows everything about Joan. But let's look at the questions here. The good thing for Joan knows that Ken's motivations are to sell. She just doesn't know how much. So for Joan, Joan's the easier one. What's her best alternative if they do not reach a deal? So if she doesn't reach a deal with him, which is very unlikely, to be honest. It's unlikely they don't reach a deal. Really, in this type of case, you all reading it, most likely they're going to reach a deal. Really, all the pressure is on Ken. And it's going to range it between $350,000 and however much he can, bet her up. Her best alternative, technically, is buying that other lot for her, or the other condo for her son to move in, who's down the way. That's basically it. That would be unideal for her, but if we don't reach an agreement, that's what it is for her. Okay, and that's bad. I get it. For her, that's bad. What's her reservation price? She says that she knows the fair market's 1.9. Any student that tells me 1.9 or 2.0 or 2.1 or 2.2, I kind of see your perspective. 1.9 is obviously maybe her reservation price. She's not going to go higher than that because she knows that's the fair value. However, there could be an argument to be made that Ken could upsell her or do a good job of selling it or somehow convince her that it's in high demand or whatever like that, which can happen. And maybe you may say it's unethical tactics. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But if he can convince her that lots of people want it or whatever, maybe he can get more money from her. It seems like she knows the fair value is 1.9, so 1.9 is probably a safe reservation. Everything else would be guesstimations by us. We just have to guess. Is that high? You agree with that? Right? Yeah. What's her goal? Her goal is to buy this at fair market or lower, right? That's it. She wants to buy it at the fair market value of 1.9 or less. You could also say here, her real goals are to have her son live next door to her. That is her goal. Money's not an issue. She doesn't want to get screwed on price, but her goal is this. When I went to the dealership, my goal was not to buy, I don't know what we spent on it, 27 maybe thousand. My goal was kind of to spend under 30, but really I was like, I want to feel comfortable when my wife is driving around without me with my newborn in the back, that is a safe car that will not break down. If she gets in a wreck, they'll be okay. That is my goal, ultimately. And if I got to pay a little bit more, I will. I have a reservation price, but I'll pay more money. Her strategy is going to be, this is kind of up to your interpretation. I don't want to answer this necessarily for you. I would think, in this case, she's trying to get it at market or below. So she may lowball him, knowing that 1.9 is the fair market, thinking that he's going to negotiate around that. So she's trying to get it under 1.9. That might be her strategy. However, you want to say that she makes that strategy work. But then we get to Ken, and this gets rough. So if they do not reach negotiation, his best alternative is foreclosure and basically off-selling the properties he has. I think that would basically be it. You can describe it however you want. He'd be foreclosed. He'd have to get rid of the stuff he has now and kind of start over, but with no credit. If you've ever been in real estate, a lot of it is, even if you have lots of cash, is working off your own credit. So his best alternative is definitely worse than hers. Now, as I talked about power, that should be a big draw to you. Her best alternative is her son lives down the street and she'll probably never reach it. His best alternative is foreclosure. Bad. His reservation price, $350,000. We know exactly what it is. Can't be less. He's cash poor. That's his reservation price. He cannot go below that. His goal, technically his goal is to sell it as much as possible.
Make a profit.
Make a profit. Sell it for $40 million, whatever. He needs to make it, he needs to sell it for as high as possible. However, he cannot lose this sale. And he cannot let her know that he can't lose the sale. So his goal is to sell as much as possible. And now we get to kind of the fun questions. And I'm not going to say too much on this. But we say, what is his opening move? And what should be his main questions? And his best approach to ask them. So she walks in. She's not going to know anything about his situation. I did have some students say, she's a billionaire. She's talked to the banks. She knows it. Right? Someone snitched. Technically, that's illegal. But I'm not saying you're wrong. But I also am not under the illusion that if you had that much cash laying around banks, that someone may be like, that dude is about to get foreclosed on. And I managed $500 million of your cash, so I'm here to be your friend. And then who knows? But assuming not, his opening move, they walk in, she sees it. She should have if he plays his cards right, she should have no idea she's the only buyer. She should have no idea he's on a time crunch. She should have no idea what his financial situation looks like. That's why we do things like dress well, look like we're in control of the situation, stuff like that, because you're trying to display power in the negotiation. And I don't need you, but he definitely does. And questions, if I'm you, and if I was Ken, I'm trying to get at what she wants to buy for, right? I need her to get some kind of numbers out. You're going to have to be very, very careful because his livelihood is on the line of talking her up, right? So she says 1.4 and he knows value is 1.9. She knows about market value is 1.9, but how comfortable do you feel talking her up, right? But also a little shady if you went that low, right? So there's that. But also, I'm not just trying to figure out what she wants to sell it for. I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out why she wants to buy this unit. Okay. Keep in mind, I've been talking a lot about he doesn't know what Joan's thinking. Ken doesn't know what Joan's thinking either. He doesn't know if she needs to buy this, if there's multiple other places she's looking at. So whatever his line of questioning is, it's going to have to be something about getting to know her and knowing how important this is. Now, one benefit he has is that he should know she has a condo close by. So if he can figure out that she's buying it for her son, that's a big help. So this is kind of a fun, interesting case. I would love to watch two people go at it that have never read it in my class. Because if you really put the blinders on and don't know anything about the other side, besides the information it gives you, like she's a billionaire, stuff like that, this is like a completely different case. Anything to add or think about that? What kind of question would you start something like this with? I don't even know. Small talk, right? It's a great place. Look at this. What am I going to sell you on the low crime rate? So I don't even know. She's a billionaire. She's got security. I don't know. What would your question be? What would you open with?
No idea.
Why do you like this location?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your interest in this
Yeah.
over here?
I noticed you have a condo nearby. Are you buying?
But how would you notice?
Or I know. Well, I mean, a lot of that stuff's well. Actually, I don't know if California's public. Here, I can look up who owns places, right? It's all public data. You can see where I live on our, like the county assessor. So he can technically know where she lives. I would assume she carries a relative level of fame. So maybe it's known. I don't know. But interesting. I will say this. When I grade this, if you want to know how I'm going to grade it, I go through and I read all of these really, really quick to make sure that you say the right things, like the right reservation prices, the right, BATNA, like generally here. And then I read in detail down here. I really want to know, like, how you leave this, how you open this up. So, cool. Good. Awesome. So that's the case study. We now have to do the lecture question. I actually just realized I don't think I actually have the lecture question in here, do I? I'll add it right now. If I don't, do I? I don't. Boom. This is lecture question. Oh my gosh, I think it's 10. I'll have to go back and double check. Boom. not worth 100 points. One time I gave a student 500 points on a 5-point assignment. So for just a minute, if he checked his Blackboard, oh man, A++, like he's crushing it. All right, so I already asked you your question. Well, the question, your lecture, am I recording? Okay, good. Your lecture question today is, what industry do you believe has the most conflict? The most conflict. So we talked about conflict between employees, different industries, tech, automotive, whatever. What industry do you believe has the most conflict between the employees? I'll get a definitive answer for you all next week, and I'll tell you which one has the most conflict. So get your lecture question turned in. It is now visible. I just realized it wasn't visible. Now it's visible. I apologize I wasn't up there. I usually add it the day of. Do your homework, get your case study done, lecture question, continue to work on your stuff. Cool? Cool. You all are great people. Enjoy the rain. I think it's going to rain again tomorrow, isn't it?